proceed for record promo reel number 770. There are 23 cuts. Cut 1, great performances, 208.
WNYC-TV presents About the Arts with Barbara Lee Diamonstein.
Welcome to About the Arts. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein. For almost 25 years, Merce Cunningham and his choreography have been a vital force. His continuously innovative work and his remarkable approach to the process of creativity have been an influential force in the development of American dance. A very warm welcome to you, Merce.
Thank you.
For several years early on in your career, you were on the one hand a soloist with the Martha Graham Company, and on the other hand a faculty member of the School of American Ballet. You were simultaneously pursuing ballet and modern dance. I guess the two paths along which dance has developed. What was that like?
Oh, it wasn't so much a division for me. I was interested in dancing, and I didn't particularly care the kind of dancing. The fact that it was so-called modern or so-called ballet didn't, at that time, mean very much to me. I was interested in information and trying to find out what made movement up. What is it? And the fact that somebody said, oh, it's a ballet step, or it isn't a ballet step, didn't seem to me terribly important. What was and still is important is what makes the step up. How do you do it? What is it? What is in it? Not what somebody says it is after it's done. So when I was a student, I was interested in studying many kinds of dancing after I'd studied tap dancing, and I would have been interested, had there been time and energy and all the rest of it, in studying other kinds of dance technique, for example, the Oriental dance techniques. But there wasn't time for that. So it was not a question of making a conflict between the two, but rather a search for information about movement.
What are the principal differences as to movement and subject matter between the ballet and modern dance?
Oh, they grow less and less.
Thanks to you.
No, I think it's just I never thought there was any difference in the subject matter anyway. I don't think that subject matter that way. One can have any kind of subject if that's what you deal with. But the principal thing in dancing that you're dealing with is movement, whatever kind of movement it may be. It may be a movement already styled and already clearly, that is, that you simply learn, as you can learn a classical technique and use it as your language, or it can be something that you invent. In other words, you keep looking for new kinds of movement. And I think that, in my own feeling, was that in studying, since I wanted to find out as much as possible, I studied as much as possible as I could do. And then it wasn't an idea about deciding that one was different from another, but rather what again was useful out of any of them. What could I do with all of that?
Well, what leads me to question the subject matter is I think of when Martha Graham first began to make dances, we became very accustomed to the psychological drama that was implicit in her dances.
Yes, but at the same time, as Miss Graham's works began, then you also had Anthony Tudor, who was trained strictly and concerned strictly with classical ballet, and yet his subject matter often was, you could call it, psychological.
Well, why did you go off on your own? What impelled you to start your own school of dancing and choreography?
Oh, nothing impelled me to start a school. I can't think of anything less interesting. What I was interested in doing was, as I said, working in movement, and I didn't want it to be, it was not necessarily a thing about not doing something else, but rather a search for something that interested me, and I didn't feel compelled, didn't think that I needed to be compelled to make it one kind of thing or another, but rather to make it to have as broad a base of movement as possible. And there seemed to be lots of different ideas available about movement. I don't mean subject matter here, but about movement that began to come up as they began to come up in the other arts, particularly in the visual arts. Different ideas, and also in music, different ideas about how one thing could follow another. Therefore, that meant it didn't have to follow, say, in a literal fashion or in a linear fashion, but it could follow in other ways. So I began to search and wonder if there weren't other ways to deal with all of that.
Well, I think that you think that the subject of dance is movement, and I know that in a citation that the city gave to you, they made reference to your appetite for motion. Would that be an accurate description?
Well, I suppose it could be. I think movement has its own necessity. It doesn't have to be explained. Can be, of course. You can give any number of explanations, and each one is probably just as true as any other one. But it does have a validity movement about it, any kind of movement, if you find out how to do it. Any gesture that you do can have a kind of force and shape and aliveness to it. You have to find out how to do it. And that's really what I intend about.
You talk of the interrelationship between dance and the other arts. What is its relationship, for example, to music and to the visual arts?
Well, ordinarily or conventionally, the relationship with music is that the music supports the dance or goes with the dance or emphasizes it, or in other words, there is some kind of accord in the sense that the sound strikes when the movement itself strikes, say. But in my own case, almost from the very beginning when I began to make dances myself, solo dances originally, I thought that it was possible for someone to move without having to have the support of music. You can have sound going on at the same time, but it did not have to support the dance. And I've kept that idea because it seems to me reasonable that you don't have to have a beat when you walk in the street.
So you're saying that dance, and you have said dancing is its own necessity. It goes on independent of rather than interdependent with music.
Well, the two can coexist. That is, you do have sound, you do have the two things in life, and you might as well have them in dancing, sight and sound. But they don't necessarily have to support each other. I figure it's better for the dancer if he supports himself on his two legs.
How important is the spectator, the observer, to your dances?
Cut 7 in performance.
Well, that's always a difficult question to answer because you make the dance really, or I think I probably do, for myself. And that is, it's something that interests me to do, so I make it that way. But then I make it, and I make it with the company, my company. Then we, of course, present it to a public, but that public can be very few or many, and I never think that that a public is a single thing. It always seems to me that there are a number of different people who can react differently. So I can't judge ahead of time how they might react, nor can I make demands on that. I'm not interested in doing that. I am interested in presenting it to anybody who might like to see it. And we go to great lengths to do that. We've traveled a good deal in order. When we get asked someplace, we do our best to get there so that whatever public is there can see it. They complete it, but they complete it as individuals. That is, they complete...
That is, the public, the observer, completes...
Each one does, yes. Completes.
So that there is really a Zen aspect to the content.
Well, if you like, yes, but I think that that's true of any art. Any spectator looking at a painting completes it in his own way.
How do you liken it to abstract painting?
I never think of dancing as abstract. It never occurred to me. I always thought that anything any human did was somewhat human. You may not have to, you might have a little difficulty saying exactly what it was, but it certainly was done by a human being. Even when humans attempt to be machines, you realize it's a human being machine. It's not the other way around.
But you yourself are very concerned with the visual arts, and almost uniquely in contemporary dance, have involved the collaboration of some of the most distinguished artists of our time. How did that come about?
Well, I was always interested in collaborating. with musicians, composers, contemporary composers, and that also led to the idea of the possibility of having artists also collaborate or make things for the dancers. And as I do with the music, I don't tell the composer what to do. I ask him if he will make something, and then if he consents, then we can continue from there, but I don't tell him what to do. So with the visual artist, I would ask an artist, as I did originally, say with Robert Rauschenberg, ask him if he would be interested in doing something with us.
Perhaps we can start at the beginning, we can fix this in time. When did you start your own company?
Well,
It's 1953?
well, something like that, but you don't sort of or I didn't start a company. I asked a few people to come and try to make some dances for them, and then people began to say, oh, you have a company, you know, and you try to continue that every day to somehow rehearse and so on, and you don't, or I didn't think of it as a company. I simply thought of it as this group of few dancers, and we were trying to make something.
But once defined as a company,
then it gets
became
defined.
a company.
Then it gets defined as a company, yes. But then, as I continued to make dances, I thought...
We're talking now about the mid-50s.
Yes, I thought it would be... And Robert Rauschenberg, I knew him then, and he was interested in the theater. And I asked him if he would do something. Rather, it wasn't even a question of my asking him. It was a kind of mutual, I think, thing between us. And he made a set, an object. I remember the first one. He made it. He was working then in a loft downtown in Lower Manhattan, and he made an object and called me up and said to come and see it, which I did. And I said, "Oh, Bob, it's beautiful, but I can't use it." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Because it has to hang from the flies, and we very often at that time played in theaters which had no flies."
What was the object?
It was an object made of. Much as his painting of that period was, made of wood taken from wooden boxes and a collage of colors and various cloth materials and comic strips. But it had to hang. And I explained this to him, and he was very cheerful about it. He said, "I'll make another." No problem. No, it was wonderful. So 2 or 3 days later, he called me up and said, "I have another one." So I came back again, and there was this stunning object sitting there.
Where is it now?
3 legs. It's now in his exhibition, wherever it is. And it was this, to me, very beautiful and mysterious object, and we could go through it, or under it, or around it, like you have a tree in the landscape, which is there, and you don't place it there, but it's there, and you deal with it. So I thought this was, for me, a marvelous thing. It's not something I had told him to do, but something that now could come into our circumstance, and I was making a dance anyway, and simply continued to make now with this in it.
Well, he likes to collaborate as well. What was the dance entitled?
Minutia. And it was about 1954, I think, that it was the first one. The first time, and then we have collaborated a number of times since then. I think that one of the things that perhaps with the artists, I don't really know, but so many of them have worked with me, and I'm grateful to all of them for it. I think is I tried not to tell them what to do. I mean, if they asked about it, say how many dance, or if they wanted to see the dance, or if they had questions, I'd always answer them. But I tried not to put anything on them, rather let them do what they might do, and then see how I could deal with that.
Was Rauschenberg the artistic director of the company for a while?
No, he traveled with us, though, for, I guess, 2 years, 1 or 2 years, as he did the lighting and the general stage thing, and was marvelous at that. He was one of the best, one of the best.
Best lighting directors you know.
Ever. It was just marvelous.
Who replaced Rauschenberg as your consultant, your artistic consultant?
Population growth.
Well, now Jasper Johns has helped us over for the last several years. In the same sense, he doesn't travel with us, of course, but that when we have something that I can consult him about, then I consult with him. Jasper did, for example, John Cage and Jasper Johns and I did work for the Paris Opera Ballet about 4 years ago, an evening-long work there, and Jasper came to Paris and had made an extraordinarily, what I thought was an extraordinarily beautiful set. I don't know what else to call it. It filled the stage.
And what was its subject?
Again, I have to say it was movement. It was an evening-long work which I used a number of the ballet dancers at the opera, and Jasper made an extraordinarily beautiful, how do you say, set
Is this
using
set
screens.
based on Duchamp's
No.
large glass?
Well, that was another one.
Can you tell us about that?
That was an earlier set. It was done in 1968, I think. And Jasper had suggested this as a possibility, and would I be interested? And I said, of course. And then he took the large glass and divided, he consulted, of course, with Marcel about this, but divided it into 7 pieces, 2 of which are hung on the stage, and the others which rest on the stage, and they vary in size. And they are prints which have been imprinted on vinyl material. Then the shapes themselves are roughly rectangular in shape, and they have a volume, so they'll stand up. They're made of plastic, transparent plastic, so you can see through and you see the print on the back, and you can also see us, as you can in the glass, of course, see us dancing behind it. And it was when Marcel asked, the only thing he asked was that if the 7 objects could be assembled at some point in the dance to roughly resemble the glass, as close as that could be given the nature of the objects involved. So the end of the dance, we assemble them all together, and it becomes the glass. It's quite an extraordinarily beautiful set.
And where is that now?
Well, it's actually it was exhibited not so long ago in Seattle. I think there was a show there, and I'm not sure all the pieces were there, but some of them were.
What other artists have collaborated with you, Maurice?
Well, Rauschenberg, of course, and Jasper Johns, and Frank Stella, and Bruce Nauman, and Andy Warhol, Robert Morris.
Is Mark
Morris.
Lancaster currently?
Yes, Mark Lancaster has done things for us. Morris Graves just did a piece with us that we did in Seattle in the summer.
So many of us think of you as such a seminal force in New York that it was with some surprise on a visit to Seattle last summer that I realized they claim you as theirs. Perhaps you should tell us about the Cornish School, I guess now called the Cornish Institute, and how you ever became a dancer. Here you come from a family of lawyers and judges, and you are a dancer.
Well, I always wanted to be in the theater, and dancing, I always liked it very much. I did tap dancing as an adolescent. And then I thought the only thing to do was to go to an acting school. Dancing school. I didn't quite comprehend that in that way. So I think it was my father who suggested that I might check out the Cornish School in Seattle, which was just the school then. And Miss Cornish, who had started it, was still alive then, a marvelous woman. Extraordinary spirit the woman had. And this was a school where her idea was if you were in the arts, you should study all of them. If you were going to be an actor, then you studied dancing and painting and music and many things. And she provided all this in this astonishing place in Seattle. And I went for 2 years. And I gradually got more interested in the dancing than the acting, and proceeded to do more of that. But the school itself was so, principally due to Miss Cornish, of course, was so alive. John Cage was there, for example. He had come to accompany the dance classes and proceeded to organize a percussion group to play percussion music. And he asked me to play in it. There were 4 or 5 of us that first time when he did it, and he got pieces written. And Miss Cornish was delighted and immediately found some percussion instruments someplace. Instead of saying, oh no, this was too difficult, she immediately did something about it. And that was another kind of experience. And it was something you could have at that school. It was a kind of a aliveness in that school because of the crossing of things within the performing and visual arts, of course. The only other place that I've ever had any connection with like that was Black Mountain College.
How did you wend your way not only east but south?
To Black Mountain? Well, Black Mountain happened because John Cage and I were touring, and we had heard about the school, and we went there to visit. and they asked us to come and teach in the summer, so we went. And
During what period were you there?
Is
it the Albers period?
Yes, yes. I was there just before he left. I think we were there the last year. I know I was there the last year that he was there. In the summer, we would go in the summer to teach.
That brief, happy life of Black Mountain continues to make its creative reverberations felt throughout, actually, the world now. Who were some of your students during that period of time?
Oh, it was very mixed. Charles Olson was a student. Just an astonishing sight to have in a dance class. It was wonderful. There were James Hurley, he was a student there, even Robert Rauschenberg for a short time. There were many different dancers, of course, but also people at the school, because I said that anyone could come to the class, provided they would come. They wouldn't just drop in and out, and that was I said that's the only requirement, you have to come every day. And those who did, they did it. They came every day.
What's the requirement to be a Cunningham dancer now?
I don't know. I think stamina.
How large is the company?
There are 11 dancers now. 11, yes.
And you've come to travel very widely in the last number of years. What gives you the energy, I mean that in every sense, to do that?
Well, I'm a dancer. And I make dances, and then I have a company, and we perform them, and I go where we are asked to perform them. And I would prefer that they be seen and not seen. That isn't an idea about a large public. Don't mistake me that way. But it is something. We do something that has to be done in order to be seen. It's not like a painting which could, say, hang on a wall and a number of people could pass in and out over a period of time and see it. We have to do what we do at a particular time and in a particular place. So I found over the years that New York was not that easy to perform in, and I preferred to show the pieces more often than not. So we began to tour, and we've continued to tour now.
And you're going to tour sometime this winter too.
Yes, we go to Boston for a residency in the winter, February, and we'll have performances there as well as classes and workshops and all of that. We just came back from France a few weeks ago. We had a 2-week performance schedule in Nanterre, which is just outside of Paris, in the Maison de la Culture.
Was that a festival, a dance festival?
No. This is one of those maisons where they have cultural events, primarily theater in this one and drama, and they had never had any dancing. And somehow or other, we got involved, and they said they would like us very much to come. They had no idea if their public there would come to see us, because it's like a workers' situation, but they have a theater subscription there, and they thought people might come to see dancing. So I said, yes, let's do it, why not?
In the 25 years that you've been involved in dance almost in this city, there must have been some remarkable changes that you've observed in terms of, well, the number of men that are now involved in the dance, the size of the audience, and the subject matter dealt with. What are some of the most striking changes?
Well, I think probably the size of the audience for dancing now is, to anyone who's been in the dance world in this city over any number of years, the size of the audience is enormous now. It used to be that if one ballet company performed, then another one couldn't. There would not really be a public. But now you have several large ballet companies performing at the same time, plus modern dance companies, plus many, many small dance events all over the city, all with a public of varying sizes. I think there are lots of reasons for it, but I think one of the reasons is the television, because it's made us look.
Do you think that television is a particularly good medium for televising dance?
I think it's a difficult medium for televising dance, but it's an interesting one. You have to think differently in working in video. We make video pieces now, and each time we make one, I see more possibilities, but also more problems.
For the dancer, what about the cameraman?
Both. For both. I work both sides. I do the camera work. I can do the camera work, and then I have been in the dancing.
There are a number of choreographers that have been spawned by your creativity and activity. Can you tell us who some of them are?
Oh, I don't really know. There have been so many people who have worked in my company, and students, people who come and studied with me at various times, and many of them make dances. But I don't feel responsible for that in one way or another, because they not only may have been influenced or whatever by me, but also by any number of other things that could have happened in their lives. So I don't feel responsible in a good sense or a bad sense that way.
Well, in the mid-60s, you invented an intermissionless form, an intermissionless performance that you entitled Events. Can you describe what that means?
Well, in our sense, it means simply something where we do any number of dances or parts of dances, and sometimes several dances at once at the same time, if the space permits, without an intermission. And that came about because the first one was done in a museum in Vienna, and they had only a large space. It was not a theater, but a huge space. They asked us to perform there, and I said yes. Then I realized we couldn't do a regular program, so we arranged this kind of thing. And then they said, you have to have a title, and I said, well, let's just call it Museum Event. And then we've gone on from then to do a number of them.
An event that presents activity.
Presents dancing and sound, and sometimes visual things. That depends on the situation. We do them in gymnasiums and churches and hallways and wherever.
Do you see it as a kind of theater?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes.
Might be appropriate to conclude this too brief conversation with you by quoting your great good friend and collaborator, the remarkable John Cage. When he referred in one of his writings to the events, he said, where other music and dance generally attempt to say something, this theater is one that presents activity. This can be said to affirm life, to introduce an audience not to a specialized world of art, but to the open, unpredictably changing world of everyday living. Thank you very much, Merce Cunningham, for being with us today, and thank you for being so generous in describing some of the evolution of your dance company. Are you planning at some time during this fall and spring to appear in New York in an event, or does that generally go on as part of your activities at Westbeth?
Well, we do them at Westbeth, but we also hope to do some elsewhere in New York City in probably March.
We'll be eager to see them as any of the presentations that you offer. Again, special thanks, Merce Cunningham, and thank you, audience, for being with us, too. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein.